first guest on this uh, podcast that I have started, where I'm just talking to my friends about something they've done that's a little different that I think folks can take a lot out of. All right. So,
Yeah.
can you just tell me a little bit about so what are you right now? Like, who are you?
So I am at the postdoc phase of sort of higher education. So that stands for postdoctoral. So I've received my PhD,
Hmm.
but I'm sort of doing continued training.
Okay. And okay, so but what like as a person, what is your like, do you have, are you is that a job? Like, do you work a job right now?
Yeah. So usually I mean, and we can go back and sort of go the whole timeline, but
Yeah,
just
sure.
so where I'm at now
Yeah.
is a postdoc is usually you're working for some faculty member
Mhm.
or sometimes the term is like PI, principal investigator of a research team, sort of the leader of a team.
Sure.
And you're sort of like, doing higher level stuff because you've, done so much of your training, and now you're sort of almost like a apprenticeship type model with the faculty member.
Okay.
And so usually what happens is you get paid by a grant. So like my faculty member I'm working under has a grant with the National Institute of Health.
Right.
And so I'm paid through that grant.
Okay.
So I'm helping run that study. I'm helping with data collection. I'm
Okay.
helping manage graduate students, undergraduate students who are helping out, cleaning the data, creating protocols, meeting with participants, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. And so is okay, so okay, let's, I guess, so what, how long, so you have, when did you get your PhD?
So I got it pretty much this time last year. I think technically it would have been like August 1st of last year.
Okay, August 1st of last year. And um so what, I guess, let's I think we need to trace back from the beginning here, because this is like a really big thing to
Yeah,
do, like being a
yeah,
PhD, having a PhD. Like, I've always wondered what a PhD was. And that's why I wanted to do this interview with you. We've been friends for a really long time, and I don't think I've really understood what you, like, what it
yeah.
took to do what you do. I think I've nodded sometimes, been like, oh yeah, I get it. I don't. And I have maybe, uh, on one hand, maybe, uh, like, that many friends who have gone as far, or even considered going as far as you have in this field, of in not in this field, but like, in at that level of education. Um,
Right, right.
and it's so for me, it's like, it's a little, it's different, right? Because it's a different lifestyle than, like, I work a job, and then I go home at the end of the day, and then that's it, and then I do the same. And I think that's
Right.
most people are that way, right? And like, especially most people at who have, I guess, our age, are like, their concern is, oh, I just go to a 4-year institution.
Mhm.
I get my bachelor's, and then I go work, and then maybe I'll get a master's, of something, and then that's it. It's rarely do you have it pushed on kids to be like, no, you need to make sure you have your doctorate, and then you can go ahead and go forward. And um, another thing is, it's called a philosophy of doctorate. Is that's what it stands for? What does it stand for?
Yeah, or a doctorate of philosophy.
Okay.
And that just basically means like it is like within some sort of field of study. Like philosophy basically in that context just means like academic or academia.
Sure.
Like it doesn't mean the discipline of philosophy that you like, learn about in undergrad and take courses from. So like I have a doctorate of philosophy in psychology. someone else could have a doctorate of philosophy in physics.
Okay.
And then, of course, you could actually have a doctor of philosophy in
In
philosophy.
philosophy, right? But
Yeah.
you know, but the philosophy portion, why do you think that? Why is that there? What does that mean to that? Because it doesn't necessarily mean you understand the philosophy of being. You guys, maybe you do take a couple courses in this, but and even like yeah, engineers take philosophy of engineering, but it's not like the focus of that study is that. Oh man, you're gonna learn all about what it means, why why you're studying,
Yeah.
why the study is important, right? Why do you think that's in there?
I don't know. That's a good
Right?
question. I mean, I know the PhD
Yeah.
was created before the MD
Really?
in Western culture. Yeah. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if the first PhD like was in philosophy. I don't think so.
Right.
My guess is it would just the word used to mean something different. It
It
used
did.
to mean just
Definitely.
like general academic discipline or something.
Yeah, I remember when I took my philosophy of technology course, and there was like we had a discussion about like how the meaning of philosophy has kind of changed, and how science used to be called like the philosophy of the natural world, and then or
Right,
something,
right.
and how that the word of philosophy and my professor was like at a loss about it, and like being like, oh, this kind of sucks. That people think that philosophy is this like super esoteric thing, but really it just means like the deep study of something, or or another. I could be wrong. But yeah, so I always thought that was interesting because because it's supposed to mean like philosophy is like the basis of everything, and then comes you have physics, and then or like no philosophy, then logic, then math, and then then everything kind of branches off and kind of becomes its own thing. But that's a whole nother
Right, right.
discussion. But it's funny that it's involved in your title. So um when for you, let's just go personally, like when did you decide you wanted to be, you wanted to have you wanted to go that far, and you wanted to get that education?
Yeah. Well, I think, part of it is depends on your discipline.
Mm,
Like I imagine someone like deciding to get a PhD in engineering would probably have a bit of a different thought process or journey. Whereas in psychology,
right.
you really can't do much with a bachelor's in psychology.
Mm,
Um, I mean, you're at least limited in the
mm,
type of things you can do. Like for
yeah.
example, you can't do therapy. You
Okay.
can't be a therapist.
Oh, you can't.
Um,
Okay.
no,
Okay. Wow.
no, and also in terms of like salary and stuff. Like at least in psychology, there's definitely a big sort of tier in terms of like a bachelor's. You're definitely not going to make as much money and stuff.
Wow.
So it was sort of like a given that okay, because as you know, I started out as an engineering
Right.
undergrad. When I
Right.
switched to psychology, it was like the plan was always to do graduate school because I would need that to
Right.
do what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
Um, and so then the question was like, well, what graduate program? Um,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
you know, I think there's some of it is just probably like the culture in psychology of like traditionally you think of a psychologist as like a doctor.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, like originally, a lot of times you think of like an MD, like a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
but then
Yeah.
you also think of like a PhD psychologist. And, I think it was just like, oh, well, like that's if you want to be like a therapist, like, the top therapists are, they get their doctorate, a
Right.
PhD or a PsyD. So, like, might as well go for that. Um, and, I'm trying to remember if I debated different master's programs. I mean, part of it too is I knew I wanted to do some research. And so then really PhD is the only uh,
Avenue. Yeah.
avenue,
Yeah.
right? Like, because, I debated like in psychology, you have something called the PsyD,
Mhm.
which is like a doctorate that's sort of focused more on practice and doesn't usually have a research component.
Sure.
Um, but like most master's programs would be similar to that. And so I didn't know if I wanted a research career, but I knew I wanted to do some of that and learn more about the whole research side of things. and
Yeah.
and that really, in psychology, like, the main way to do that for clinical, to
Hmm.
do clinical research, you kind of got to go the PhD route.
And so how long is okay? You finish your so bachelor's usually 4 years, master 2 years, and then how long is a PhD process? Typical.
So yeah, so
Yours
I
maybe.
went to um yeah, so I went to kind of joint master's doctoral program. So you get your master's on the way to getting your doctorate.
Hmm.
So I know in some fields they're separate.
Mm.
Like, you get your master's first and then you go to a doctorate program. But for me, it was
Yeah.
combined. So traditionally, it would be 4 to 6 years.
Hmm.
Well, let me. We have it's a little bit different for us because we have something. We have, like, what's called an internship that's required.
Okay.
It's kind of like a residency for medical school.
That's okay. That's interesting. Yeah.
Um, it's weird. It's called an internship, but you go external to do it.
Right.
Um, and then we have externships where you stay internal to do them. It's weird.
Wait.
Um,
Why do they call that an external
I
and
don't,
an
I
intern?
don't
You
understand.
never
I
figured it
really
out.
don't know.
Yeah.
I've asked many people. I'm like, you realize this makes no sense? And they're like, yeah, I
Yeah.
know. That's just what we call it.
I just want to let you know your teeth look really great right now. I don't know. Just letting you know they do, yeah. Wow, you're taking
My
great care of
dentist
them.
would be very happy.
Yeah. Phew, that we could talk about that. But um, dentists are technically doctors as well, right? That's an interesting thing,
They are dentists. You got to do quite a bit of school, and they
right?
often have sort of like residencies or postdocs, some sort of
No way.
advanced training.
They have postdoctoral work that they do.
Well, that's not the right term, I guess. But, like, after you get your degree,
Yeah.
I think you still expected to sort of practice under someone for a few years,
Gotcha. Like
just
a
like a
residency.
residency. Because when a doctor's at residency, he's actually an MD. Um,
Right. 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 You call them doctor, and
and
yeah.
right. Like if I interacted with residents, like, uh, on my internship, I would refer to them as doctor in certain contexts. So even though they're not, like, licensed to practice independently,
They are.
because they still need to finish their residency, they have their degree.
Right.
So it's kind of like me right now. If I have my degree, but, like, the idea is I'm not quite ready to go out on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I'm
Uh,
sorry, I completely interrupted you. So you have to do an internship and an externship, and then you go forward, and then you do
yeah,
more.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like, basically, you have your 4 to 6 years that would be, coursework,
Hmm.
dissertation, the traditional PhD stuff, and then we add one extra,
Okay.
plus one for the internship year.
Okay.
So in total, it would be like 5 to 7 years, I guess.
Wow.
Um,
5 to 7 years post the 5 to 7 years maybe include that might include your master's or might not. Right.
no, it would. If it's a separate program, usually then it's shorter. So, like, I know some in I think it's in counseling, they have some that are, you get a 2-year master's at one institution, then you apply to a different institution for 3 more years to get the PhD. So
Gotcha.
then it would be 5 years total.
5 years total. Okay. 5 years. All right.
And
That's
that's probably the average, I would say, 5 years.
that's a long time. You know what I mean? Like, you right? It's funny because you think of your 20s and or whenever you else you decide to get this, but let's just say typically someone usually I'm sure there's a lot of differences here, and you could speak to that. People going out and working for a really long time and coming back and getting their PhD maybe in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s,
Mhm.
60s, whatever. But like yourself and many others, I'm assuming, there's folks who are just like, all right, I'm just gonna, just power through this, and I'm gonna go like one to one to one to one, academia, academia, academia. I want to do my research. I want to do this. Now, that puts you at like you're already 22 on average, right? When you graduate college, right? And then two
Yep.
more
Yep.
years, you got your master's. Okay, you're 24. 5 more years, you're 29. Okay, you're basically 30, and then you've gotten your doctorate. And then you could kind of
Right.
and you chose to go and do a postdoctoral work, right? But
Mhm.
you could go and just go be a person and go around and tell folks on the road like, hey, listen to me, I'm a doctor, all right? Like you better listen to me. I'm Dr. Dave, all right? And I'm look at my name. And then when you fill out all those forms, you could be filling out forms, be happy like I'm a doctor. Look at the doctor form. I'm not the mister, I'm not this, I'm not that. I'm a doctor. And
I did do that recently. That
did it
felt
feel
pretty
good?
cool.
Did it feel good? Yeah.
It felt kind of cool, and then also kind of like, I don't know, narcissistic at the same time.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
Uh, and I was like, yeah, I don't know how often I'm actually gonna do that, but
You know, do you that's another thing I want to talk about is titles and all of that, but it's interesting to like fin it to be like starting your to think about the life that way is like not healthy, right? I'm starting my life when I'm finished with schooling. I'm starting my life once this is over. I mean, I felt that way when I was in college. Like I'm gonna start my life when
Mhm.
college is over. That's when my life is gonna start, and it's not. I mean,
Right.
a mentally healthy way of looking at things. But I'm assuming I'm not the only person that feels that way when they're going through the kind of the rounds of training, right? Studying and learning, feeling like they're preparing for something like things haven't started yet. How do you feel about that long process? How'd that feel?
I mean, I didn't mind it because,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, like, there's certain things that I wanted to be able to do, right? I wanted to be able to research the kind of things I was interested in. I
Yes.
wanted to be able to be a therapist. And so, like, it's all like in the service of getting to that point.
Right.
Um and like I wasn't able to just do it after my, undergrad degree. That
Mm-hmm.
just wasn't an option.
Right.
Um
Like physically,
and
like technically, like physically, it is not an option in America.
legally,
Like
we'll say,
legally, like legally, that's the better.
I cannot get licensed in almost, maybe there's a few states where you can with a bachelor's, but almost every state you
Oh,
can.
really?
Um, and no one's gonna give a bachelor's, a decent sized grant.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not how the academia stuff works.
It's not how it's done.
Um,
Gotcha.
so you know, for me it was like exciting because I was sort of like getting closer to doing these things that I really wanted to do, and you actually get to start doing them, right? Like in my second year, I was doing my thesis,
Mm.
a research project on my own,
Mm-hmm.
with the help of my mentor. I was seeing clients on my own, like under supervision. So like I'm doing the things I want to be doing in
Mm-hmm.
graduate school. Like it's essentially like the job I would want to be having.
Right.
Um,
Right.
it's just that like I need support and training when I first start that job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like I mean that's kind of how I viewed it, of like in some ways like it allowed me to do the things I wanted to do sooner.
Mm-hmm.
I could have gotten a job, um, you know, with my bachelor's in psych, either working at a hospital or something, or
Sure.
work for some sort of company or something, but I wouldn't have been able to actually do the things I wanted to do, which,
Right.
you know, during the PhD I was doing. I didn't have to wait till I was done
Mm-hmm.
to do those. I mean, I have to wait to be totally independent.
Right.
Like I have to have a faculty member, mentoring my research. I have to have a supervisor,
Mm-hmm.
a wide therapy, but like I'm still getting to do those things.
Right. Yeah, that's actually really interesting because you see in some jobs like people work, right? Like apprenticeships, right? But like and then people apprentice for trades and stuff and then they go and do it on their own, right? And that's more formal and it's very more similar to what you did, right? And But another thing happens in like the world of working, where people work jobs for a while and then they're like, huh, I could do this on my own. So I'm gonna go and be a consultant. I'm gonna go and
Mm-hmm.
be a this. I'm
Right.
gonna go do this. And it's kind of the same thing. Um, do you think that some people see it differently than you? Do you think that like you could see it happening, or like you maybe tangentially you kind of felt like that was happening, along the way, or maybe you've had discussions with people and people are like, I just can't wait to just get out there in the world, or I don't know. You were in it. I
Oh
wasn't.
yeah.
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 Yeah, no, there's plenty of people, and there's also people who just leave the doctoral program. Like on
Yeah.
average, we had one person leave each year,
No way, really.
for a variety of
Yeah.
reasons.
Wow.
And talking with other programs, that's not an uncommon sort of percentage. It's about like 1 out of 8, Um, and I think that like some people don't like always having to. You can't really be independent, right? Like, because
Right.
the idea is you're not ready to.
Mhm. Mhm.
But like, some mentors are better than others. Some
Mhm.
supervisors are better than others. And when
Right.
people feel like they don't have a good mentor or supervisor, they start thinking, man, I think this would be more enjoyable if I was just on my own.
Mhm.
Like this isn't fun for me.
Right. Right.
I want to be able to. I would do things differently. I don't agree, and I've got to sort of like, play by the rules, do
Mm.
what my mentor supervisor wants. And so people, talk about, I just can't wait to be done where I can just decide what I'm going to do,
Wow.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, in some ways it's similar to like a
A
job where you have a
job.
boss, right?
Yeah, it's not that
You have to
different.
follow,
Yeah.
like
Right.
you have limitations and stuff.
Yeah. You ever work a job you don't like
So,
and then leave it? Yeah, people do that.
mhm.
But that's kind of what it is. But it seems kind of weird that it's like I'm sorry, continue. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I know we keep bringing up the job analogy, but like, I mean, I've very much felt like graduate school was closer to a job than college 2.0.
Ah,
Like
that's
I
a really good
remember
point.
thinking, I going in, so I came in right out of undergrad. I hadn't
Mhm.
worked a few years after, which is actually uncommon for clinical psych.
Right, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I thought so. Yeah.
and and I was like, oh yeah, I mean, this will be like college, but like the courses will be harder and like more interesting. And
Right.
but it'll be similar. Like I was like, oh, I'll keep on my schedule, like wake up at noon, stay
Yeah.
up till 2 a.m. or something. I'll
Schedule
take
all your
afternoon
classes really
classes.
late. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, do
yeah,
my
yeah.
homework at night. And it's just not at all like that.
Yeah.
Like you have to get a stipend, you have essentially a part-time job where you're working 20 hours a week,
Mhm.
grading or TAing or research assistant. Um, you've got like a ton of stuff. Like there really isn't, when I look back at like undergrad, you had so much free time. I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, you might have been different with engineering, but
Yeah.
with psychology, like, I mean, I was doing maybe max 30 hours of work a week.
Oh, we had very different college experiences.
Okay, yeah, yeah. This
That's
is the
hilarious.
benefits of leaving engineering. Um,
You tried to tell
so
me
like,
earlier, right? If only you told me you warned me. Start hanging out junior year. I was like, it's too late, John. I was like, I'm taking acting
I do
classes,
remember
Dave.
those.
I'm taking them. I'm taking all these really cool courses where I talk where like it's not computers. And oh man, yeah, no. So
But
yeah, you had a lot more free
but
time, I
like,
guess. Okay, yeah, and maybe that's more
yeah. I
typical
mean,
of in the college realm than not typical. You would say.
I mean, I mean, it depends, right?
It
Like,
was your experience, yeah.
I come from like a wealthy family, so like I didn't have to work a part-time job and stuff,
Hmm.
to go through college, and so like that obviously makes a difference.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
So, you know, definitely not everyone's experience, but that was what was mine. And
Right.
so, then going to graduate school, it's really like, oh, okay, like now you're working more like, you know, instead of 20 to 30 hours a week, you're doing like 50 to 60. Um, and like, it's the most efficient way to work is not usually like noon to, 2 or something.
No, 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 no,
Um,
no,
it's
no.
gonna be, early to bed, early to rise,
Yeah.
whatever the Benjamin Franklin said.
Yeah, he said
Um,
somebody catches a worm and then he gets a doctorate after when he's 30.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds about right.
Yeah.
Um, so, it was really like, it's also like where I learned professionalism of
Mm,
like, you know, as like a college student, like it's just not expected that, you can wear whatever you want. You,
right,
you know, you wear your sweats,
right,
you know, how you have to talk to professors and stuff, but like in general, it's not sort of like the professional environment that you might learn about working at an office or
right.
something or a hospital.
It's more like
And
high
so
school.
that was
It's a
the
little
other
high
thing.
schoolish. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
The other whole thing was like learning that of like, how to, converse and power dynamics and, in the work environment.
yeah.
Um, so I think it's a bit of a misnomer when people say like, at least for PhD program, that it's like college 2.0 or something. Like no,
No.
it's like your first job. You're just probably not getting paid nearly as much.
Were you? Was it hard to like because okay, so you're enjoying what you're doing. You're basically doing like an apprenticeship, right? It's just basically like I think that's what people may not understand. Maybe I don't understand it.
Yeah,
Maybe everybody else in the world. Maybe I'm gonna go cross the street and I'm gonna talk to a guy. And I'd be like, "Hey, dude, you know about getting your PhD?" And he's be like, "Yeah, dude, it's basically like working a job." I don't know if many people see it that way though. Okay, I don't know. I think people see it like, oh man, PhD it takes 8 years. I heard like it takes 10, it takes 20 years of your life. Um, you're gonna you're gonna go in a cave and then you're gonna start bringing a come out and it's gonna you're gonna be time travel to the you're gonna be like oh the light and then you're gonna have your PhD, and that's how I thought it was, and it kind of makes more sense. It sounds
right.
kind of cool actually. It's like you're like oh I'm super interested in this thing I like, right? So I'm just gonna keep learning about it and then I'm going to practice it with this mentor structure. And it's like something
Mhm.
that's probably existed in like we're talking about like in the world, like we were talking about the Western world. I think in the world for a really long time the idea that you have
Oh
someone
yeah.
teaching you how to do stuff. Like meanwhile, the rest of us, right, what else are we doing? We're getting out into the workplace and maybe we have a mentor. Maybe like some companies are structured really well and they set up mentorship and I've experienced a lot of that. And then but for the most part, like when you're just out there, right? And you're going from a bachelor's to a master's, and you're like, okay, so you're already set up. There's all these roles that are clearly defined for people. This is the mentor. This is the your professor you're reporting to. This is the professor that you're grading for. These are the students in the
Hmm.
classroom that you're grading the stuff for. This is your research. This is and everything is kind of categorized, kind of like roles are clearly defined, kind of like a video game. Yeah, in video games, everything's really clearly defined, so it's easy. You just kind of go right, and it's easy to do that for a really long time because you're like, oh, this is all really clearly defined. That's the guy I got. That's the target. This is the thing. This is the this, and this is the this. I gotta do this to this to this, and then I'll get there.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. To clarify, just as you were speaking, like there is this, a big part of it is sort of like independence in terms of like each sort of silo, right?
Hmm.
So like for my thesis, it wasn't like I was told, okay, so you're going to study this and here's the data, here's how you analyze it, you're going to read these
Okay.
articles, write it up. It was like, all right, what are you going to do?
That's cool.
Well, I think maybe I'll do this. Okay.
Okay.
Well, go find. go find some data or collect some data. Here's the library password. Go figure out read what articles you're gonna need to read.
Right.
Um, so you knew you had to do this thesis, and you've got this mentor, but it's definitely not like a hand holding apprenticeship
Yes.
like you get more so in like high school and college.
Right. Not like
Uh,
you're not. They're not like your guidance counselor being like, make sure you apply to your dream school at the top, and then you put your not so the school you don't want to go to so much at the bottom, and then it's like, no, which school are you gonna go to? Cool. You gonna write a paper? Go. All right, cool. You
Yeah,
picked
yeah.
it. Go.
And you can be like, "Hey, what do you think of this school?" And then he'll give you your opinion and
Right.
"Oh, how many should I apply to?" "Oh, I think this number." Um, but then at the end of the day, you're still going ahead and doing it.
Right, you're going out on your own. You're coming home, and you got you. I remember you talking to me during this whole process, and like you're like, I actually schedule like hours out of the day. I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure you told me this. You schedule hours. You're like, these are my times that I have to set because I'm working this kind of job, part-time job where I'm doing my research.
Hmm.
I'm working. I'm doing this. I'm doing these, running this study, and then I'm coming home and I need to make sure I take some little bit of time just to make sure I work on my thesis every day, just a little bit
Hmm.
to make sure it gets done. And yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
I
interesting.
mean, that's one of the hardest parts I think about the second half of your PhD. The first half, you're doing more classes, it's a bit more structured. But like the dissertation, right? The idea is that's like really an independent contribution almost. I mean, it's not really independent because you still have a mentor and stuff, but
Hmm.
you know it's really kind of you going out on your own without the training wheels. um and um you gotta like balance and manage time for this like 2-year project, right? Like if you think like a semester long project is hard to like manage, now you've got this 2-year long thing, and you
Hmm.
you can't procrastinate a dissertation. Like you can't do it the night before.
Right.
um so you really gotta like sort of you'll have later in graduate school, okay, here's like 2 days out of the week where nothing's planned. It's just work on your dissertation.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, man, that's so much time. Like, you got to learn to sort of organize it and stay productive and efficient, because you do need that time to get it done.
Hmm.
um, and no one's telling you, hey, you got to wake up at 8
Hmm.
and work on the introduction section,
Right.
and then in the afternoon you've got to analyze the data. It's like, so I think that's like a big skill you end up learning, is sort of like time management and big project management, because that's just part of research in the PhD.
Yeah, I think that's what happened to me because the course load felt for me. It felt like a lot, like when I was doing engineering, and it was like my life became within Google Calendar. I lived within
Mm,
Google Calendar. I lived by Google Calendar. My all my dates for my assignments were set up in Calendar, and like
mm.
everything was just I became I became this very schedule oriented person. So much so that when you book this, it was a scheduled. You booked talking to me and do us being able to do this. I sent you a link to book my calendar, right? Like I'm
Right,
just
right.
so schedule based, and it's not because I'm an organized person. It's because I'm such a disorganized person that I really need a calendar to keep myself together. You know what I mean? Like, and
Right.
it's kind of scary. How long is a thesis?
Um, so like because you have like, tables and formatting and stuff, like it'll get pretty long. So like, I don't know, the thesis was probably something like 50 pages and the dissertation 100 or something. But like if you like actually distilled it down to just like the pages that
Yeah.
were pure writing,
Hmm.
it's probably half of that. Um,
But it's like it's
uh,
really distilled, like knowledge, like really precise talking. Like you're not like Hey, so I was thinking about this psychological concept where I was just thinking about it, and it just struck me in the middle of the day. I was sitting on my couch. I was thinking, wow, people think differently sometimes. And it's like, no, no, no. It's really specific and it's like very precise. And each sentence is like really well researched. I'm sure a lot goes into each paragraph, right? There's content. Like, there's no fluff.
Hmm.
There's no getting away with fluff sentences like we'd write in high school, right? And there's no getting away with
Right.
increasing the period size. So it's big enough that it goes bigger, more pages. Oh, man.
you I mean, one of the big changes from undergrad to grad writing is you now want to write concisely rather than write long.
Right.
Like in undergrad, you have these word limits and page limits, and like you write to them.
Right.
Um,
Minimums.
and
You
then
had
in
word
grad school,
minimums.
they're like,
Yeah, yeah, right. They're minimums and
yeah,
they're
yeah.
yeah, they're right, yeah, yeah. In grad
and
school.
and now you have these word maximums where they're like this needs to be 3,000 words.
Mm-hmm. We lost him. Hopefully he comes back. Dave looks great here though, but there he is. Okay, we just lost you for a second.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
I know you had looked like you had froze a bit.
yeah. Okay, so you're back, but you were saying.
um yeah, I was just saying like the style of writing is so different than undergrad. If you want it to be short, you want it to be concise, like those are good things.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone's, I assume this is probably true of like an industry and any job, like people have limited time, like they don't want to read any more than they need to.
Right.
And so if you can get your ideas across, in 1,000 words rather than 2,000 words, then that's going to be better.
And if you, so, do you miss it? Do you miss being in the in you're in postdoc? Do you miss being in that world anymore?
I most people in my program do 5 years PhD plus the internship, and I did 6 years plus the internship. And part of it was because I did like graduate school so much, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really want to leave.
Right.
Like learning was just like a really fun thing. Like you don't have like that much responsibility. Like it's not like I had like faculty meetings to go to and had to, teach full courses and stuff. It was like, oh, I get to like, work on my dissertation and work on other papers,
Mm-hmm.
related to topics I'm interested in. And um, I can sort of pick my schedule. Like I ended up doing sort of like 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. type schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I also I really do genuinely like learning. And I remember being concerned, like, oh, once I become a professor, like I won't be able to keep learning. And I was like, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't sound like a job I want actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, I applied for faculty jobs and postdocs, but I realized really I wanted a postdoc because I wanted to be able to keep learning.
So
Um,
a post. I'm sorry. Cut. Keep going.
yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, that's a part of a postdoc, right? Is a lot of continued learning.
And you're doing research, right? In your postdoc, right? That's the concern is that you're helping, maybe a professor achieve like get something done, right? Like some research
Hmm.
done, right? And
Yep.
so you think that this going forward, you think you want to be doing continue be to do, can you just add just forever, I don't know what the Latin term is, add something, forever do
At
postdocs?
L.
What's that?
At L.
Is that called add L?
That
Is that what it is? Okay, add L.
I
Do
don't
do.
know if that's Latin or not, but that's like for academia, like these authors et al, and then it could be like 100 other
Oh,
authors.
really? Okay, interesting. Yeah. Do you want to just do this forever? Keep doing postdocs.
Um, I mean, so in some areas, multiple postdocs is the norm. Like I know in neuroscience, that's like a common thing,
Mhm.
to do multiple. For clinical psych, like in my area, that's not necessarily the norm.
Mhm.
Um, I have thought about it because I do like learning and stuff, and like again, part of it is I come from a wealthy family, and so I'm not like needing to get a higher salary to pay
Mhm.
off student loan debt and things like that.
Right.
So I can stay on a postdoc salary. Um, so, but I've been talking to a lot of different professors and stuff, and they were saying how they feel like they've actually learned more post PhD than during their PhD.
Really.
Um, which I was surprised at. I sort of, and probably like you were like, oh, well, you learn everything during school, and then you know what you know, and then you use it
Right.
after, once you start your job
Mhm.
as a faculty member. But they were saying that's really not the case. Is there's just, you know, there's sort of the old saying of like, the more you know about something, the more you realize you don't know.
Yes, absolutely.
Um, and like that was so much of my experience in graduate school is like, I mean, I just was saying to my friend the other day, I was like, I bet I could have like 100 lifetimes and I still like would not know that much about therapy. Um, and that's like genuinely what I believe. There's just so much, it's so complicated.
So much.
And I'm sure like people in other fields feel similarly.
Absolutely.
And so, so now I'm sort of more excited about the idea of being a faculty member because I know I am going to keep learning stuff.
So you're in clinical. So what's a little confusing is that you're in clinical psychology, but you're not going to become a clinical psychologist. You want to become a faculty member, right? That's so that, yeah, yeah. If you could explain
Yeah,
that for me.
yeah. Clinical psych is a little bit of a unique PhD that's probably different than any other. Well, not any other, but a lot of others, in that it has like a practice applied component. So if you like get your PhD in physics, it's not like you're necessarily learning at the same time, how to do some sort of applied practice or job.
Hmm.
Um, and so, like, with clinical psych, you're essentially learning like all the research that you would with like PhD in physics, but then you're also learning all the therapy stuff that you'd learn, in a PsyD program or a master's in counseling or something.
Okay.
And so there's really like two different jobs you can go.
Okay.
Um, that's you can go like, okay, be a researcher, or you can go and be a therapist or like a clinician. You could do
Sure.
assessments, things within therapy.
Right.
um, and so that's a little bit unique, I think, from other PhDs where you can go into industry, and like there are jobs outside of academia, but you didn't really have an apprenticeship that set you up for that job like
Right.
we do in clinical psych.
Right. Right.
um, so yeah, so I want to do more of the research stuff and be a faculty member, but I also actually enjoy the therapy a lot, so I want to do some of that on the side as well. I
And you
want to
can.
try to do a. It's
Yeah.
harder to do a mix, and people have said that to me throughout. That's kind of the way the field works. Is that it sort of is like pick one or the other.
Mm.
Um, and so I think you have to pick one you're more dominantly doing. And so
Mm.
I'm sort of going to probably be more so research, and faculty member will be like the main thing. But then I do want to, be doing therapy stuff on the side.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's interesting, and I've compared that to some famous people before, but I'm not going to mention who. With you, and I've said, oh, you're going to be like this guy that's in
Mhm.
popular culture that I'm not going to mention, and you're like, yeah, you're like, oh, it's kind of like that because that guy writes books, you know, is a teacher and does there and talks about the therapy that he conducts. So
Hmm.
yeah, so that's really cool that to you want to have it all, and that's really interesting though. I think to me that's like that's a very interesting way to approach things because you're getting this cool experience of like getting to teach kids, not kids, students, right? Like
I'm starting to
folks.
call them kids too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
It's when you
sorry.
realize you're getting older.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm definitely not getting younger. Um, um, yeah. Oh man. So you're teaching them, and you're going back, and you're also like practicing, and then you go back to them, and then you're kind of this figure of a person who they could see both sides. You're like, oh, this is kind of I could see this kind of academic, Dr. Dave, he's a professor, but also he's practicing, and maybe I kind of it when I was learning, I always wanted to ask my teachers like, so like where are we gonna use this stuff, and
Hmm.
like and a lot of them, they saw they we would get jobs that were different than the stuff we were learning, right, and like vastly different, right, but within technology, right, but they were not the same as the things that we were learning about, right, and
Right,
I
right.
actually talked to a teacher about it once, and and like one professor found out like what I was gonna go do, and they literally looked at me like I was crazy. They're like, "What? Well, you should be doing this heavily technical engineering field job," and I'm like, well, I didn't. I was like, I was literally like, I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny when the professor said that, and then I said, then she retorted, "Oh yeah, but you know what? I know you like talking to people a lot, so you're probably gonna like it doing your talky person job. But you probably should be doing this really techie job, this really like nitty gritty like engineering-y job." But a lot of people went on
Mm,
to do like not exactly what we practice in school, and so
right.
you're practicing it, you know what I mean? And so like it's kind of cool. I think it's cool to get both sides. And I'm a person who likes I'm never satisfied like with anything.
Yeah.
So I always need
Yep.
more. I need to experience life this way and I need it that way. So I don't know. I just want
It's actually, I think, one of the hardest parts about the PhD is, again, because like the more you know, the more you realize what you don't know, and
right.
you're like, I want to know this, I want to know this, I want to know this,
Right.
and it's like there's just not enough time, like not enough time, not enough energy. Like, at some point you got to pick, saying, okay, I'm gonna be good at this, but not great at it,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna be, try to get great at this, and maybe this other thing I'm really just okay,
Yeah.
because you just can't be great at everything. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
there's some superhuman clinical psychologists out there, but
Yeah, there's some people out there that are just geniuses, right? And they're just like, oh, I could do
yeah,
everything. And what you're saying. It's so funny because it's like everything is just analogous to everything else, right? Like it's like, oh, I want to, but oh man, I'm practicing guitar right now, but man, I really want to learn the drums. It's like, oh man, I want to do this. Oh man, but I really want to do that too. Oh man, but I really want to do that too. Oh man, I really want to learn to draw, but like, oh man, it's got to take me a long time to get really good at this to be able to like draw anything with any sort of substance. But oh man, if I don't practice guitar today, then I'm gonna lose. I'm gonna forget this. It's the same thing, and
mhm,
it's like you can't do everything. Like there's so many fascinating aspects to psychology, especially like you know you could go down a number of routes, right? And there's even there's a lot of subjects that I'm interested in. I'm like, oh, what about that? What about that? What about that? What about that? But
mhm.
you have to pick, and you picked. So what did you pick to go down? What's your rabbit hole?
So the research I focused on, like the sub area during graduate school, was the measurement of well-being. So, like,
Hmm.
one of the things I was interested in was like, not only sort of distress and symptoms, but also sort of like, you know, what helps people, um, sort of have these aspects of life that makes it worthwhile and, interesting and satisfying that aren't captured by, sort of psychiatric medical symptoms and, some of these negative constructs, of things like, meaning in life, purpose in life, um, self esteem, self compassion, self acceptance, things like, um, also sort of like flow and engagement of sort of when you're really like loving something and you're just
Mhm.
totally engrossed in it. Um, and so I then like, I sort of had an interest in, I come from an engineering background,
Mhm.
right? So I had some of like the math stuff that I liked, and I minored in philosophy, and so I liked some of that stuff. And so what I found
Oh,
myself
okay.
gravitating towards was like, sort of this issue of measurement and quantitative measurement in psychology. Of how like we have these such big ideas that are very like interesting and abstract, and like, to be quantitative science, we have to, assign numbers to these different constructs.
Mhm.
And it was like, you know, do these numbers actually mean what we think they mean? And how
Right.
do we decide that? And I mean, I think it's probably what makes psychology so hard is, the measurement just is really imprecise.
Yeah,
Um,
and difficult to get,
um,
right?
and
Yeah.
so, oh yeah, I mean, and so I sort of ended up focusing a lot on that of like, okay, like, what is it that we're measuring? How can we maybe measure it better? How can we like, mathematically model it better and things like that.
And so you you would say that your focus in your doctorate is in is in I thought, see, I understood it. You were like a statistical psychologist. That's what your thing. That's your thing. But is it more focused on this well-being, uh, number, trying to get that number quantified and all that stuff, or is it? Are you just a general? Because like, is your thing like, oh, I'm Dr. Dave. My specialty is the well-being number.
I like that. It's a nice ring to it. Um, I mean, there are like, so most fields in social science have like a statistics specialization. So like
Sure.
quantitative psychology, quantitative sociology, biostatistics and stuff. So like you can just specialize in the statistics and, the math of that field.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did not get that PhD. I didn't. You can get a PhD in quantitative psychology. I got a PhD in clinical psychology.
Oh,
Um,
okay. I'm a good friend.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but like to do quantitative research, you have to learn statistics,
Uh huh.
right? Because those are the tools you use to sort of draw conclusions from the quantitative data. And
Right.
so I ended up kind of having it was almost like a minor or a concentration in quantitative psychology in my program.
Oh, okay. All right. That helps me understand it a little better. Okay. So you have a doctorate in clinical psychology. Um,
Yeah.
and that means like helping people, right? Like through therapy, right? That's what clinical psychology means, right?
Clinical is actually broader than that. I know I've been saying therapy a lot because that's like one of my main interests. But like you can get a degree in clinical psychology and actually do like no therapy or helping people. You could do like assessment stuff.
Right.
Um, or you could do like
Gotcha.
sort of more basic research on like the genetics of, a disorder where you're not necessarily interested in how to treat it. You're focused more so on like, the genetic causes or something.
So what does clinical mean?
Clinical means like having to do with um uh what the term would be like psychopathology or psychiatric disorders
Ah,
or
okay.
mental
Mm,
disorders.
gotcha.
Um, so it could be the treatment of them, but it could also be other
Just a
things. Could
study of
be
them.
like
Okay.
causes, assessment. Yeah, the general study of it.
Right. Because you're not going out there and being like being like why did we develop these mental faculties? That's like evolutionary psychology, or what is the neurochemical that might be involved in the disorders, effects of, like, what is psychology, and how does it happen, in, what is it in a chemical way, and like that's like maybe like neurochemistry or whatever. That's different. Okay, I gotcha. So this is the study of kind of disorders, basically, right? To
Right.
be like really to sum it up, kind of. All right. Yeah, I feel so stupid. Like, do you feel like these are dumb questions? Like, it
No,
feels like that's a dumb
no,
question.
I don't. I mean, some of these things I didn't know when I started graduate.
Do you think
I
people?
mean,
Yeah, go ahead.
you don't know until you're in it.
Right. Do you think some people that know you may not understand what it is you do,
Oh, I mean,
other
I,
than
I
me?
assume like most people outside of academia don't understand.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's kind of the whole
I
point of this thing. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say I have a friend from high school who does I think industrial engineering, like something very different than clinical psychology.
Yeah.
But like we actually have been able to like connect on just academia in general and getting a PhD in general. And like there's things
Oh.
that he gets
Hmm.
when I talk to him that like like my parents wouldn't understand or my brother or something.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Wow.
because it's like a unique little world of academia and there's all these sort of little bits of the culture that you pick up and can relate to.
That's interesting. It's its own world, right? But at the same time, it's analogous to our world, right? But it's just interesting because it's like I think I think I'm a pretty good friend, but like I thought I would understand. And like, so I started this whole thing because I was like, I just kind of want to better understand this. And something that fascinates me, and the reason I wanted to touch on PhD is like, like, what do you have to do to get it? But you did a very good job of explaining how to get there, and so thank you for that. But like what did you go through? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is it different than what I go through? But it doesn't actually sound that different in some ways. It just sounds like, here's the thing, like, you really got to know what you want out of life a little bit. Like, I mean, you could kind of like, you're okay, you start with this really broad thing. You could do anything in the world, right? Right. You could do anything, right? And then you go and you study this, get this bachelor's degree, and you could do a lot of things, right? Still a lot of things.
Hmm.
And then you get a master's, you go to this, and then you're like, I'm gonna spend the next 5 years doing this, and that's longer than that bachelor's or that master's was. And it's like, you really gotta. I know you could kind of like decide along the way, like make these little decisions along the way, but
Right.
that decision tree gets smaller and smaller in scope, um, in broadness. Like, it's like if halfway along the way you decide I want to, like, you're like, oh man, I forgot, I actually just really want to play in a rock band, and you're like, oh, oops, oops, and even though there are a lot of doctorates in punk, I just gotta, I don't know if you knew
Oh,
that,
wow,
there's
that's
a
cool.
crap ton, it's really weird. It happens in punk for some reason. I don't know what it is.
Huh.
Lead singers with doctorates, and usually like heavily scientific. Uh, Offspring, that guy's
Oh, so you're saying they didn't get a PhD in punk music? They got a
no
PhD in something else and then just became a
science.
punk.
Yeah, punk rocker. Yeah,
Wow.
huge punk bands, man. Bands that are bigger than some of the stuff than this album I got. No Effects, as big as No Effects and Bad Religion. He's a
Huh.
he has a doctorate in biology, in evolution. He specializes in evolution. The lead
Mhm.
singer of the Offspring has some. I think it's chemistry.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and the Offspring, right? You may not know Bad
Yeah,
Religion,
yeah,
yeah, but you know Offspring,
yeah, yeah.
and I don't know if you know the band The Descendants. he also has a doctorate. Yeah, they're a less popular, but these are really big acts, like in punk, man. They're like
Right, right.
they're huge. Like so much so that, like, I mean, they're like, I know somebody who, we both know somebody who has a brother that went to a very good school, that actually took a course with the lead singer of Bad Religion, in
Yeah.
evolutionary, like, yeah, evolutionary theory or something, and got
Wow.
to and so he teaches, but he's in one of the probably one of the biggest punk acts of all time, probably, when it comes to the genre of punk, in the top 10 of punk, period. And it's
Wow.
crazy, and they have doctorates, and they become rock bands. Crazy, right? I always wonder. I was like, what? It's like, what the heck, man? I'm. How do you do that?
I mean, clearly multi-talented.
Right. Yeah, yeah. There's something to it. I wonder why. Yeah, like, there's some kind of draw to from with punk, and like, I don't know, like, wanting to, I don't know, being really interested in knowledge, I guess. I mean, but going from that, it's just interesting because it's like, so those guys, they're multi-talented in that sense, that they're able to do all these things at once, but they're not the normal, right? And they're so how do you feel, about, like, go like zoning in, was that hard, is that in that way, like, did you ever think to yourself, man, I'm really I'm pretty much, I've dug myself into a very specific corner here.
Right. I'm the well-being numbers guy.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And
I'm
that's
Dr.
where I'll
Dave, the
be.
well-being number man. Yeah. Yeah.
um, well, I mean, so I did realize I didn't want to do that topic for the rest of my career,
Mhm.
is I wanted to branch out, and so that was one of the other reasons I wanted to do a postdoc,
Mhm.
is it gave me the time and opportunity to branch out. So like
Mm.
now I'm looking, like I'm hoping to apply for a grant where I'm looking at sort of what predicts increases in well-being during therapy.
Mm.
um,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
so it's still like involved with well-being, but like I want to bring sort of a more applied sort of therapy angle to the research. um, and so I'm hoping that postdoc can then sort of help me shift that a bit.
Gotcha.
um, and that's not like uncommon. You also have people like professors who, after like getting tenure, they suddenly like decide they want to study something totally different.
Mhm.
And that does happen.
Yeah, it's so funny because you say, like, oh, I wanted to, I decided I wanted to study something different, so I'm gonna study I want to study the quantitative assessment of this thing within psychology. But you know what I mean, like, it's you're still being ultra specific, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
sure.
yeah, you must have. Do you think that it takes, like, a real, like, just super passion to do it, super love?
I mean, I do think you have to like learning, and like sort of have some sort of like curiosity as like a motivator.
Mhm.
um Maybe you don't have to, but I think it'll make it more enjoyable.
Mhm.
um of like, even when reading other people's research, like, oh, you want to know what they found, you want to know what uh the synthesis of the literature says. So then you spend 3 hours reading the article or something.
Wow.
Like this, the grant that I'm helping on with the professor, it'll probably be like overall like a 10-year process, from like the initial formulation of the idea to when, like, the final paper is published in the journal.
Mhm.
um and so like that's not a short-term reward.
Right.
You have to be okay with the delayed rewards in academia.
Sure.
And I think, you know, uh, there has to be something, internal that's motivating you, because there's just not that frequent of external, uh, rewards.
When it comes to, but I mean, just with you, like, I just know with me, okay, I'm a person who lives in
Yeah, yeah.
Like, in college I had an existential crisis. In I have existential crises, man. I'm a person of existential crisis. All right.
Sounds like
Yeah.
you're a human being.
Yeah, sounds like I'm a person, right? Maybe somewhere along the line. Maybe I'll find that out. Yeah. So you never had that, huh? You never was like, uh-oh, what have I done? I'm 3 years into this. Okay, let's just look at the whole academic process. 4 plus 2, it's like what? You're trying, it's like a 10-year process total,
10 years of higher education,
right?
essentially.
10 years. Okay, so like imagine like you're like you're like halfway through it and you're like, uh-oh, like yourself personally. Did you have any
Right, right.
existential crisis? I mean, you're a guy, you read psychology. I mean, I know you like existential philosophy because I know you,
I
right?
I
Yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
do.
So,
We had many good existential philosophy discussions.
yes, we did.
Um,
We're having one
I mean,
now.
I wouldn't call it an existential like crisis. I mean, I definitely like I feel like I had an existential crisis, probably multiple in college,
Right.
and a high school even. But like I would say it was like a career crisis of like, hey, do I want to do this? Like, to, is this like actually the career, like the job I want to
Okay.
do?
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Um, so like we all used to joke about this in our program, your backup career. It was like, okay, if things get really bad and you decide you're gonna leave the program, what are you gonna do?
Mhm.
Um, so like my backup was a high school math teacher. Um, and like that was actually like a thought of comfort at times. Like when it was really hard, you were like, well, if it gets too hard, I can always be a high school math teacher.
Right.
Like I can make that
Yeah,
happen, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. And where was this? This
Uh,
is during the post. This is during the doctorate, the doctoral portion. Yeah,
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 yep. I'd say it was more so in the first half. Um,
yeah.
but
I think you'd make a great
uh,
math teacher. Just letting you know. Yeah, yeah,
well,
yeah,
thank you,
yeah,
thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. That's interesting. So you think
Um,
about that. You'd fall back on that. I use fallback thoughts sometimes. I think about that sometimes. Just in life and anything. I'm like, oh, I could just. Oh man, it's okay. It's okay. I can
yeah,
always turn
yeah,
around.
yeah.
I can always turn around. I can always go back. Like I go out or so. I could always just go do this. I could always go do that. I could go do that. Yes, yes. That
And
makes sense.
and usually for me when that came was after getting like critical feedback from like multiple supervisors and mentors, of where it just feels like you're doing everything wrong, nothing's going right, and
Mhm.
you're like feeling like maybe I'm not that good at this. And then, once you start feeling that, it's not as enjoyable too.
Right. Right.
If you're criticizing yourself and doubting yourself, you're not having as much fun at it. And so, I definitely had those moments.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah. I remember because we used to have talks, right, about like what you were gonna do next, and I felt like for a while, like you're like, oh man, I was like, I'm not gonna do like I thought I was going down this path, but I don't feel comfortable. Like I don't want to really do this. I thought I was gonna go
Hmm.
ahead and do this, and then I'm gonna actually do this. Not that that doesn't happen to all of us, but it's just interesting. It was interesting to watch that happen to you because it's like it almost felt when you're an academic, right? You or in academia, right? You think that like, oh, you're just gonna follow this path. This is the path. Go. You do that thing. But really, there's a lot
Yep.
of choices and a lot of things you could do. I mean, being a professor is really different than a being a clinical practicing therapist.
Hmm. Yep.
These are different things. These are different careers. And there are other careers that I'm not mentioning that you could go down, but those are like the big ones, right? And like like,
Yep.
oh, I want to teach high school psychology. Oh, I want to do this. Oh, I want to you know do that. But there's paths, and I'm assuming you thought you had the idea of what you were gonna be, and then you did. It's kind of funny because you're kind of adjusting, right? And this is each time you're adjusting, right? You're like, I'm taking this postdoctoral to kind of put me closer to the path I want to be on. um that's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, it's like we're all adjusting, right? Yeah, in a way, constantly. We're just like just righting the ship a little bit. We went this way. We're like, oh, we went too far that way. You gotta just go a little bit more this way, and then it's like, oh, go this way. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're someone who's changed careers.
Quite a
I
bit.
think it's they say it's the norm for millennials when you read different surveys and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it's, but it's interesting because like, um, you're changing within your particular arena, which means that you have to really like
Right.
this field. You know what I mean? Uh, while I've known
That is
other
true.
folks,
Yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean. Other folks like are changing like outside the arena, so that's what they do. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, you could leave the program, like as I
and be a
said,
math
some
teacher.
people do, and then you can change arenas.
Right,
Um, but yeah, you're right. Like, I'm not gonna be an engineer.
right, right. Exactly,
uh,
exactly. And do you feel like the PhD is something more people should consider?
um, I actually think in clinical psych it's something that probably less people should consider, and that I think a lot of people want to practice and be a therapist,
Yeah, I
and
have the little doctor in front of my name.
um and the PhD, there's some PhD programs that are like focused more on practice and stuff, but like a research focused PhD, like you're probably not necessarily going to like it if you're not interested in doing research and just want to do practice.
Yeah, if you want to be
um
working
you
with
know
people, helping people, talking to people, and like practicing therapy, how they probably envision
right, like,
themselves.
right, then I would say like get a PsyD or a master's, or social work is another route. Like there's lots of other routes. And you know I think that, again, like it worked out for me. Like there's this like sort of culture in psychology of like, oh, like if you want to be a therapist, like the best degree is a PhD, so then go get it.
Hmm.
But like I don't think that's like the best way to look at it. It's more so, okay, what degree is going to get me, to do the job I want to do.
Gotcha,
um
gotcha.
and so it worked out for me, and then I like ended up liking research, and specifically quantitative research, because that's what most clinical psych programs focus on. But like if I didn't end up liking that stuff, then I probably would have been happier at a PsyD program or a master's program.
Do you think that, like, so do you feel that you wish that folks understood more about about this whole process? Because like people get work, right? Like people get it, like you finish college, you go to work and stuff. Do you wish that people understood it better?
I mean, I think I think something that people don't understand is like the research component
Mm-hmm.
of like, you know, I feel like a lot of like college students, like especially in the beginning, like think of research as like boring and like annoying. Of like, oh, there's a research project, oh my god, or a
Mm-hmm.
research paper, like
Right.
um but like I feel like, I think it's hard to get a genuine taste for it during undergrad, but like actually like the research stuff can be like really fun
Mm-hmm.
and like super interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and like a great job. I think it's just hard to really get a taste for it because as an undergrad, you're not given like responsibility, because the belief is that like you don't have enough of the foundational skills to really do your own research.
Mm-hmm.
You could do like an honors thesis, and I think that's something I wish I had done. I didn't do one, but I think gives you a good taste for research. But like, I think more people like would enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's this discovery process of learning new things, and um, but I think people, don't. Research often is portrayed as sort of like boring and annoying, and I think more people would actually like it, whether it's through a PhD or some other route.
That's I really appreciate you just breaking all this stuff down for me today and helping me understand it a little better. And the it's funny because there's no sitcoms about like academia really. You know what I mean? There's a workplace sitcoms. There's the
Big Bang Theory, I
yeah. Oh
guess,
my
is the
gosh, it
one I
is.
can remember.
It is, isn't it? I guess right. But do they show a lot of that? Is there a lot of
They, I know I feel they touch on like the narcissism and competitiveness of academia,
interesting,
which is
interesting.
definitely a thing.
Really? Oh, okay.
Um,
We have to talk about that
oh yeah,
sometime.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I haven't seen a lot of the show, so I can't say too much other than that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because he is, but that's the character though. But like, yeah, I haven't seen many that are set in like like that kind of like a professor environment. A academic like strict like you're in like that's the setting of the show. Is
Right,
that
right.
yeah. So it's like harder for people to relate to, and especially because not that many people do it, right? And it's
Mhm.
not that common. It's pretty rare. I said on one hand I could count the number of people who I know that went for all the way, and like it's really when I think about it, you're the only person in the U.S. that I know that's a friend of mine
Hmm.
that did it. In Europe, I know two folks who do it, and it seems more
Hmm.
common there for some reason. Like it's not weird, like and different, and not that it's weird to have a PhD. It's like different, like you know what I mean. It's like not common, I'm sure if I surveyed,
Right.
like just went around, talked to people, like, oh, do you have one? You have one? Yeah, do you have a doctorate? Hey, do you? It'd be not that common, so it's I think it's helpful for people to understand that aspect. So thank you so much for doing this today. I hope
Yeah.
that you're willing to do it again with me while we talk about more broadly, you know, you and what you do. And I know you wanted to talk about some stuff and touch on what you actually like study, and do research on and all of that stuff. And so hopefully how do you feel?
Yeah. No, this was great. This was great talking, and yeah, I'd be happy to do it again.
Awesome, wonderful. I've recorded it, so you have to do it. So even if you're lying to me right now, I'm just gonna use it against you later to make you do this with me. I really wish
Yeah.
we could do this in person, and you could be here in my little mini uh, makeshift studio here, and so hopefully we'll get to do that, and we'll just get to sit together and talk and have um, a not digital conversation, maybe in another world. We'll in another time if things ever change, we'll get to do that. But I was glad to be able to do this, and thanks for being my first guest on this, as it was very nerve wracking. so,
Oh yeah. Of course.
um, so closing thoughts for people. Uh, uh, is uh, is getting a PhD fun? Nonstop fun.
Um,
Nonstop fun. Okay.
definitely not nonstop
Is
fun.
it like
I don't know.
going to Chuck E. Cheese or going to the arcade and just having all the quarters you need?
Nothing competes with Chuck E. Cheese, John.
Okay, nothing. Gotcha.
Um, I mean, it was for me, and
That's really
I
good to
think
hear.
that for a lot of other people it is, and um, I think that being a professor can be a pretty good gig where you're sort of getting paid to study and learn about what you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Um, at least when it works out good, that's what can happen.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that for me, like after listening to this, what I take away from it is, um, like how cool it would be just to study something you're just so interested in and just have it kind of formalized and and just and just have this path kind of made for you where you're like, oh, I just love this subject so much that I'm gonna get just really down and nitty gritty, and like I'm gonna know this thing in and out. And I think that I wish more people got the opportunity, because I think that we all have things that we're fascinated by, and we all want to study like in depth and learn about. I think that's everybody, and
Right.
Like if only we everybody had more enough time to go down that path and be able to do that. That would be cool. But we don't have that much time. But yeah. So I think it's cool, and I think it's I'm really proud of you. I want to tell you that for
Thanks, man.
going through the whole process, because I think it was lengthy, and you've been moving around a lot, a lot, a
Yeah,
lot, a
that is
lot.
part of it. Not
Yeah,
moving.
and you've taken it all in stride, dude, and that's really admirable. So great job. I'm very proud to tell people. Anytime I tell people, I'm like, that's oh yeah, that's Dave. Yeah, he's a Dr. Dave. You could refer to him as. He's got his doctorate. And so you make me feel better by being able to do that, and I think that it's really cool. Um, do you? Okay, I gotta close this out at some point, so I gotta finish on this. All
Yep.
right, all right. Do you? Can you do me a favor, and can you start introducing yourself as a doctorate?
No, I'm definitely not gonna do that.
Can you change um when someone enters your number on a phone, can you tell them to make just make sure to put dr dot right there, right in front, and you introduce, like, whenever you meet anybody, like when you're going through you're going through the grocery store and you got your mask on, and they're like you hand them off your credit card, and you're like, oh, what's your membership number? You'd be like, well, my name's Dr. Dave, and you know I I thought you would have it already, but let me tell you Dr. Dave's number. uh I would love for you to introduce yourself as a doctor way more often, and I can think of yeah, it'd be really great to film. I'd love to film you do that one day. Just go to people like, "Hi, I have a doctorate. Can you
Oh
please call
God.
me Dr. Dave?" I would love to go. This is my dream, okay? My post-COVID dream. I want to live in a world. I want to go ahead. I want to go show up to some social function with a lot of people we don't know. Maybe a conference. No, no, not a conference, because there might be other people with PhDs there. I want to show up. I want to go to some kind of social function, like a birthday party for somebody we don't know that well, and I want to
Yeah.
keep introducing you. But the rule is that you have to say, "Hi, I'm Doctor Dave. Hello, I'm Doctor Dave." So, how do you feel about that?
Uh, yeah. I don't know if I'll be going along with that, but I guess I can't stop you from doing it.
Right, right, right. So you feel a little bit of you don't like it that much, that, like you don't tell people to call you doctor this, doctor that.
Yeah. To me, it comes across as narcissistic. I'm not saying like it objectively does. That's just kind of how I
Yeah.
see it, and so I don't really want to be associated with that. I also think actually the doctor thing was a bit more common in previous generations, like baby boomers.
Oh, really?
Um, and like now, what's more common is, say the doctor, but you put the PhD at the end.
Instead of putting the doctor
Um,
in front.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's not so
Um,
confusing when you look at a book and you're like, "Oh, this is a doctor that wrote it." And you're like, "Oh, this is a PhD." And he has a PhD in something very unrelated to this medical book that
oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah, right, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, so I feel like that's kind of more common with millennials.
Yeah. That's a, that's interesting. Um So thank you so much, Dr. Dave, for this. I'm gonna stop it, and we don't have to end the call just yet. We could I'm just gonna stop it.
Thank you, John. I
Yeah.
appreciate you having me on, and
Oh,
I'm excited to see future interviews with the podcast here.
yeah, yeah. It'll be fun. It'll be interesting to see where it goes, and I want to have you back on, and I promise I'll be a better interviewer, and it'll be even more fun next time you come on. I promise. I promise.
Hey, I had a great time.
I'm glad. All right, stop. Let's stop it. So